I identify as Christian and I am affiliated with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
I personally don't identify with the denomination.
Roman Catholic.
Christian, Protestant. I was raised kind of lefty Baptist in the South.
I am a Christian.
My religion is Christianity and I am a Roman Catholic.
I am Christian. I'm United Methodist.
I'm Christian and I'm in the Disciples of Christ denomination.
I go to Ethos Church, which is a non-denominational church, so I'm Christian.
I grew up in the church, so my mom and dad were both deacons in our church, and it was a small community in rural Appalachia, so it was a very Christian world.
So I grew up in that church. My dad was a pastor in the Southern Baptist Convention, and so I just grew up going to church, and I've stayed ever since.
I was kind of just brought into it. I mean, my whole family's Catholic, so born, baptized, kind of pushed through, but as an adult, probably a little more just liking to find kind of a peace for the soul.
I grew up going to the same church that my parents went to and just kind of came to it from birth.
I grew up in the church. I think it wasn't until college that I made a conscious choice to follow my religion.
I grew up in the church my whole life, so I don't know that anything in particular drew me to it.
I don't use pronouns for God personally. I just say God.
The common language I use is he, his. That's because I grew up in a more conservative Disciples of Christ church where we use that language, but I believe that God is above gender, so pronouns don't really matter.
I do associate God as he, male.
I think this is where English has a problem, because like if you look at other languages, then you can have a personal pronoun that's non-gendered. But for English, it's he or she, so you have to choose to make something personal. It has to have a gender. So I go with he because I think it's worth it to have a personal God pronoun. Also, Jesus used Abba for father, so that's a little bit of a precedent there. But I think people who use she, it's fine. And sometimes I do every once in a while to keep myself reminding that God's not mad.
I know for a lot of text, it's kind of typically used as a him, but when I honestly think it's more of an abstract entity.
I think I tend to change the pronoun most times that I talk to God. A lot of times I just say God and don't associate a pronoun with it.
All pronouns and no pronouns.
I guess I think of God as a he, but I don't really. I always refer to God or Jesus. I definitely refer to Jesus as a he, just because that's what I've been told that he was. But yeah, I don't think I really refer to God ever as anything but God.
In private, I will like change, I guess, between he or she, depending on the context. In public, usually I avoid pronouns altogether. Women are present and they have really like important roles, but in terms of like equal representation, no, it's like overwhelmingly men.
And scripture just comes from a world that was 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago maybe, and it was a very different world in terms of how women were treated. And sometimes women were treated like property.
I don't understand why people try to enforce those same types of values. I think that it was maybe appropriate for that time period. I mean, it wasn't really ideal for me, but now it's just inappropriate.
Yes, I think that the Bible was written by men for men.
It's pretty non-controversial to say that women in the Bible are usually second-class citizens.
I think that there's definitely a favoritism toward men and women cast in a very specific gender role identity.
There are things in religion that appeal to people of all genders, and maybe there are some elements that might appeal to one gender, but I think that it's fairly universal.
Definitely in the Bible where it says the wife should be the husband, like should submit to the husband and that sort of stuff. I don't jive with that.
So for trans people, I think that the Bible can be oppressive because it uses very heteronormative language.
I don't think that they feel welcome. And some churches do welcome them, and I think that's great, but I would say most of them don't really want them there.
I have a few trans friends that are either in leadership positions in congregations or going to be in leadership positions in congregations, and I love how much of a unique perspective they have to add to how we are doing church and how we are reading scripture, and I think it's really important to hear their voices and see that different perspective.
The church will say, okay, there's that one verse that says man shall not lie with man, so it's wrong to be gay. But then there will be verses that say, if you steal something, we should cut your hand off, and we're not doing that. And then I'm like, so how can you pick one thing to enforce more than the other?
Religion has oppressed people and made people feel less than worthy. It really, religion can be a very harmful tool that people use to manipulate systems.
Other maybe religions or denominations actually don't want female leaders. Women can like sing or teach, but I know several people who don't believe women should be pastors.
Obviously, for Catholics, only men can be priests, which is like a huge one, I feel like. But just from my education growing up, there's been, I feel like, a heavy abundance of females who work in other forms of religious teaching, either leading Sunday school or working with a lot of the service or more corporal works.
I'm 24 and just graduated from college a couple years ago, and with my age demographic from campus ministry experience most recently, it was definitely true there are more women than in our campus ministry. We always joke that that's the way to get guys, is you have to have girls and then the guys will come, hopefully, because boys in college aren't interested in religion generally. That's like a broad stereotype, but I think at my age women are just more mature, and religion maybe draws a more mature mind that isn't in quite such a rebellious teenage stage.
I will say that most of the potlucks or things like that were run by women in the church. Women were usually the ones doing the nursery, that sort of thing.
I grew up in a pretty open denomination and had a lot of female role models within that, but I had a lot of friends in much more conservative denominations that did not think that women should be in leadership at all, including not even teaching men in any capacity.
Typically, the women do the cooking and the preparation for dinners and things that go on immediately following service. And it kind of follows like Southern American gender roles.
So it's funny, I'm actually doing a report on this in one of my classes about why men aren't going to church as much as women are going to church. And I think like masculinity and some of the dominant forms of masculinity and like why and like how men are supposed to suppress their feelings, while church can sometimes be seen as like touchy-feely.
The vast majority of leadership roles in the Roman Catholic Church are filled by women. So it's just I guess the final decision is in the church is done by men. And I think that's like a question that we need to continue to ask as Catholics.